In anticipation of Thanksgiving, I had imagined many hot-button issues around our Thanksgiving table: American politics, Israel, the generation gap. Instead, I was surprised to find that most of our conversations centered around the future. Specifically, this Thanksgiving, our extended family included a fair number of 20-somethings at pivot points in their lives. As I walked between the rooms, I heard the same conversation again and again. An older person asking a younger person about their plans. What will they do? Who will they be? And are they starting now? Which made me wonder, as I looked around at the adults in the room, could any of us answer that question? After all, each of us has a story about how our lives were forged by the choices we made, but also by the things that happened to us, the opportunities that we seized and the opportunities that we missed. Do you ever wonder what your life would be like if you had done even one thing differently? Earlier this summer, I came across an email that I had written in 2006. At the time, I was a young mother with a 2-year-old and a newborn baby. I was exhausted. And I mused how great it would be if we had something that could somehow electronically track feedings. It would be, I wrote, a PDA-like device with a one-touch button to bring up kids' schedules and insert an activity, an icon for bottle, for eat, for play, for nap. It would have a notes section that would pop up with an entry with all the opportunities to put in your mood of your child and little face icons: happy, sad, fussy, temper tantrumy, and even a medicine icon. And there would be, I dreamed, a merge calendar function to see multiple children's schedules overlap. I'd call it, I concluded, the baby tracker. Now, you may be looking at me right now and saying, well, Michelle, that app exists, and it's called, get this, the baby tracker, which is pretty much what I thought as I nearly deleted that old email until I realized that it was dated August 22nd, 2006. And then I couldn't stop thinking about it. Something nagged at me, and I went to look it up. Do you know when the first baby tracker app with those functions launched? According to Google, 2014. It now has over 80 million users. Of course, I'm a rabbi, not an inventor, and there were many good and practical reasons to have simply filed that away. And yet, I couldn't help but briefly wonder what the world looks like in which I woke up the next morning, or frankly, any morning between 2006 and 2014, and anachronistically asked my favorite computer scientist, hey, could you please teach me how to write an app? I tell you this not to impress you with either how innovative or idiotic I am, but because we all have some version of this story. Some might have been, some could have been, some would have been, or even should have been. If only we had done the thing that we thought at one point or another could be done, but we didn't do it. Some of those are things so small that even we forget about them, as I had forgotten about that email all these years. But some are big, and they shape our lives with what if regrets. What if I had gotten that person's phone number? What if I had ignored my parents' pressure to become a doctor and pursued music instead? What if I had traveled before my knees started to give way or a stark diagnosis came for me or my partner? Life is so short. What if I had done the things I dreamed about doing when I dreamed about doing them? One night, as I was in this mood, I happened upon the premiere of America's Got Talent, season 19. So, if you know America's Got Talent, it seems to be a show about a bunch of people doing just that, really going for it. And so while I'm not generally a fan of reality TV, I decided to sit down and watch the whole episode. A few acts in, I found myself wondering, what kind of show even is this? In between the usual talents one would expect were some of the most bizarre things that I have ever seen. Okay, a woman training a dog, a sweet 13-year-old who transformed into a terrifying contortionist, complete with horror movie makeup, which sent me down the rabbit hole of wondering, what are the rules of this show? It's a competition. Like, does no one have any expectations about the kind of thing that they're actually looking for? Obviously, I had to sit down and watch the entire rest of the season, which only got weirder. There were amazingly impressive athletic feats, so wild that it was hard to imagine how anyone could have imagined them, let alone accomplished them. For example, a ballerina who walked over a balance beam made of bottles on point, or an acrobatic troupe who performed a human tower with one guy on the top precariously perched on another guy's head as the guy on the bottom tried to steady the whole thing while on a rolla bola. There was some guy who swallowed scissors, and a woman juggling, I kid you not, juggling with her feet, who impressively spun an actual table. These people had trained long and hard. You could see the danger, the precision, the countless hours of sweat. And yet, at the end of the season, although the heart-pounding acts each garnered much applause, the person who won was an unassuming singer from Indiana. Richard Goodall, a janitor at West Vigo Middle School, told the judges that he nearly didn't come. It was such a big trip, such a big reach. He'd never even been on a plane before. His previous biggest gig was karaoke night at a local bar. His whole life, he reflected, he had been ordinary. He wasn't training or sweating a million hours. To the contrary, he was just doing what he did. So what changed? The judges asked him. What got you here? He shared that his wife, Patty, had died of cancer in 2021. When you're married for so long, he said, and they pass away, you've got a void there. And your biggest concern is figuring out who you are without them. For him, the answer to that question was a could have been. As a young man, he had sung a bit, but mostly to himself. He had been known at school where he worked as the singing janitor because he would go around singing with each step. But now, he wondered, what else could he be? What else could he do? Could he do it? So many of us might have let our insecurities tell us no. But Richard Goodall reflected that he had nothing to lose. This was his moment to seize his second chance. We often read the book of the Torah that we're in right now, Bereshit, as a story about a one-and-done creation that rolls out into a story of our ancestors fulfilling their clear and obvious fates. Everything is done. But as we read today in the story of Jacob and Esau, of Isaac and Rebekah, there were a million choices they made along the way. There were starts and stops and big swings in their narrative. There were inevitable moments, and there were so many moments that were not the least bit inevitable. In each moment, they make choices that transform and change their futures, which reminded me of my favorite prayer, which asserts that God is Mechadesh B'chol Yom Tamid Ma'aseh Bereshit, the one who renews the work of creation every single day forever. In other words, every day is its own new creation. Every day is its own new chance. You may think of yourself as having been cast in stone long ago, but you were not created once. Every single new day is an opportunity to create yourself again. Richard Goodall did this. And what's fascinating to me about his obscurity to center stage Cinderella story is that he did it not through radical change. Among so many competitors who had honed complicated and challenging and even death-defying skills, he simply mustered the courage to share something that he'd been doing all along. He stood there in his jeans and his baggy t-shirt, opened his mouth, and just sang. His voice, of course, was beautiful. But what was so striking was the sense that he was just being true to himself. Like if he had been holding a broom in the middle school, you would have gotten the same thing, which is where the impact of his story lies for us today. After all, most of us are not going to perform on AGT. But all of us have something that we do with ease, with joy, with authenticity. Maybe for you, it's knitting or painting or making mouth-watering cookies to deliver to friends who are ill. Maybe it's a professional pursuit or an idea or a story that you're bursting to tell. If you're not doing that now, today comes to remind us we get one chance to live. Don't file away that email. Don't miss your chance to take center stage. Don't get stuck in one answer to what your future will be. We all have our versions of unrealized opportunities. We all have creations to renew, not just at Thanksgiving, family gatherings, and not just when we are young, but every day we get to choose our answer to who will you be. As the old expression goes, everyone gets the same 24 hours in a day. The only question is, what will you do with yours? Shabbat Shalom.